Welcome back to this week's episode of From the Desk of Paulina Luna. Getting into some crazy headlines this week and stories, starting with what happened at President Trump's residence at Mar-a-lago and how the FBI obtained a warrant to raid it. Getting into what happened with Representative Scott Perry's cell phone, followed by what Governor Desantis did to a Soros DA out in Hillsborough County, of course answering questions from all of you, and our infamous Florida Man of the Week. This is From the Desk of Paulina Luna. My name's Paulina Luna. I'm pro-life, pro-God, pro-gun, and anti-globalist. All right, let's start out with what happened with President Trump's home. So the first question was, when this news broke only a few days ago, was what judge in their right mind would authorize this warrant? And also two, it's leaving many Americans scared. Right now, what we're seeing is the political prosecution and really Soviet-style behavior coming out of the DOJ to authorize taxpayer-funded organizations like the FBI against the American people and political opponents. Remember, it was only a few months ago that the FBI was actually placing parents on watch lists that were attending school board meetings. Now, I want to read you this tweet that was actually put out by Ned Ryan, and he points out a good fact when everyone was asking what judge would ever authorize this. Judge Bruce Reinhart, who's reportedly the most likely judge behind the warrant authorizing a raid on former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, is also, now listen to this, a former attorney for convicted sex offender and notorious pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. So if that doesn't raise red flags, I don't know what will. I've also heard that he was also tied and a well-known Obama donor. In fact, I think people actually pulled his donation records, and yes, it was on there. So this is something that managed to rally every single Republican in the country behind the president, because it's really setting a precedent that even Democrats said is dangerous to do in a political climate. Andrew Cuomo, we know that he's not a good guy, but even he recognized how dangerous this is. Andrew Cuomo put out a posting actually on Twitter. He said, DOJ must immediately explain the reason for its raid and must be more than a search for inconsequential archives, or it will be viewed as a political tactic and undermine any future credible investigation, blah, 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 January 6th. Okay, so Andrew Cuomo, one of the most corrupt people in politics, realizes how dangerous this is. It actually brought many people to rally behind President Trump. We saw Dan Scavino actually had posted President Trump, 2024. A lot of people feel this way, though, because it hasn't just stopped here. We see still they are pulling out all the stops with the J6 committee. We've seen many people that are being targeted, and they're now expanding this investigation further. I can tell you, I personally know Representative Scott Perry. He is a good man. He actually, for those of you who may not know who he is, he's a representative out of PA. He's also a retired general. So it's not like this man has, this crazy criminal history. He doesn't. He's actually a really incredible person. And he also happens to be in charge of the House Freedom Caucus. Now, the House Freedom Caucus is one of the constitutional conservative factions of Congress. And when you are hearing people like Jim Jordan and Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Scott Perry and Byron Donalds and all of these incredible thought leaders around the country, they're actually members of the House Freedom Caucus. So what we're seeing is the people that spoke out against election fraud, the people that spoke out against a lot of the corruption that we're seeing out of DC, to include the Hunter Biden laptop, which is something that we've covered extensively on the show, are now also being targeted by what it seems the Biden Department of Justice. I really respect Ducey. As I've mentioned before, Ducey has continued to bring these questions that the American people have to the White House. And of course, the press secretary wanted nothing to do with it. Hear what she had to say.
Is this administration weaponizing the Justice Department and the FBI against political opponents?
Peter, the president believes in the rule of law.
That's bull.
The president believes in the independence of the Department of Justice.
That's a yes or no?
False.
No, that is no. It's a yes or a no for you. I'm answering the question. You may not like it, but I'm answering the question, and I'm answering the question, and I'm telling you that we are not going to comment on a criminal investigation. The president has been very clear. I laid out what his thoughts were back on January 7th in 2021 about how he saw the Department of Justice. And I'm just going to leave it there. We're not going to comment from here, from this White House, on a criminal investigation that is currently happening.
Justice in this country is not blind. In fact, it's very evident that the same DOJ that's looking into people that have literally done nothing refuses to acknowledge the fact that there are literal photos of Hunter Biden with firearms, with drugs, doing illegal things and activities, and yet this man has not been investigated. He's not really even been punished for what he's been doing. There's literal physical evidence of it, and yet he gets a pass because he happens to be the president's son. I'm sorry, but many Americans feel the same way. Ironically enough, it was less than a week ago that President Trump actually made a mention of what's happening with our DOJ and our justice system at CPAC. Check out what he had to say.
We are a nation that has weaponized its law enforcement like never before against the opposing political party. We are a nation that no longer has a free press. If I renounced my beliefs, if I agreed to stay silent, if I stayed home, or if I stayed in my basement, the persecution of Donald Trump would stop immediately. That's what they want me to do, but I can't do that. And I will not do that because I love our country and I love the people of our country so much.
I mean, the fact is that, you hear people laughing, but this is third world BS. This should not be taking place. And I think when you're really looking at what's happening with Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden and how they're getting all these free passes, and then you see how the entire media over 4 years could not destroy this man enough. So they are now weaponizing the DOJ against him. I believe it's absolutely in an effort to prevent him from running from office in 2024. And I can also tell you that they managed to piss off the entire Republican base before a midterm election, where, mind you, they were already projected to completely get bulldozed, especially with the fact that you have literally Biden's credibility and favorability in the hole right now. They lost the largest voting minority in U.S. history, which they thought they owned, which was the Hispanic voting bloc. You have this in addition to that. There's no way this will haunt them. And President Trump was absolutely right in saying that this is absolutely worse than Watergate. So some interesting facts about Judge Reinhardt. He actually began representing Epstein employees on January 2nd, 2008, just one day after departing the U.S. Attorney's Office, where he served as an assistant to the U.S. Attorney, closely involved on the convicted pedophile cases. So that should be the first red flag. The second thing is that after accused of leveraging inside information about Epstein's investigations to curry favor with Epstein in 2011, he was named a prosecutor who allegedly violated the rights of underage girls whom Epstein selected sex from in the crime victims' rights lawsuit. So do you see how it's incredibly important to pay attention to what's happening with who you are electing for local positions, who's a prosecutor, who is funding these prosecutors? Because these people end up getting so solidified in their swamp, in their corruption, and then they go and do stuff like this. So going back to Judge Reinhardt, they basically banned a sitting president, President Trump, from social media. You now have Fox News that has also basically said that they won't allow Trump back on the network. You impeached him multiple times. They jailed his supporters. They now raided his home. And now they're going after congressmen that were in his circle of influence. We saw it happen with Representative Perry having his cell phone confiscated while he was with friends and family, being served a search warrant for what reason? What reason does the FBI have for looking at Representative Perry's phone? Are they going to say that it was to find more information on January 6th? The point is they have no reason for going into Representative Perry's phone. Representative Perry, he's made it his entire career in Congress to fight globalism. And what we're seeing right now is there are these two separate factions really in government. It used to be, I would argue, back into the 40s and 50s, that you really didn't have a lot of differences per se between the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. Now, it is noticeable hijacked differences between the two. It is no longer one party or they both love this country. It's only one party that is really loving and fighting for this country, and another party that I would argue, yes, there's corruption on both sides. However, one party in particular, that's the Democrats, they're pushing very, very pro-China legislation, and it's not good for the American people. Representative Perry, I can tell you that the only thing he cares about is upholding and defending the Constitution and his constituents. And I've talked to him on a number of occasions, and he's a good dude. And the fact that they're doing this to a former president, they're doing this to congressmen, if you don't think that they're going to do it to you, you're not paying attention. They will. And it's very scary to see this unfolding and how many people are not waking up to this, how many people are not focusing on this, because frankly, it's only going to get worse if we do not take back the House and the Senate. If we cannot secure and solidify a secure election, this will only continue to get worse. And frankly, it happened in South America. History repeats itself if you don't know the facts. Going on to what happens and how you should handle corrupt prosecutors or corrupt attorneys. Governor Desantis, prime example, he actually recently got involved with a George Soros prosecutor in Hillsborough County that was not upholding his job duty. So some news outlets in Florida late last week ended up reporting that Governor DeSantis suspended State Attorney Andrew Warren effective immediately. And I heard this chatter, especially being that I'm close to this area, this was pretty viral in the local community. But DeSantis detailed the growing emergence of woke prosecutors across the country. Do you remember a couple episodes back, I was talking about the chaos that was happening in these inner cities and how a lot of these prosecutors were not enforcing the laws because of who they were tied to? We don't have to say his name, but I'm sure they'll put a graphic in. You know who it is. The point is that these prosecutors are effectively nullifying laws with selective enforcement, allowing crime to run rampant, not just in one area, but literally across the communities and across the country. Well, Governor basically asked for an examination of actually what was taking place in the Sunshine State here in Florida. And the results pointed to the 13th Judicial Court in Hillsborough County, and he found that State Attorney Andrew Warren was a Soros-funded prosecutor that was a part of that problem. So he did like any good governor should do, and by good governor, I hope that Kari Lake does the same thing in Arizona. He suspended him. He said that basically he was not going to be upholding the rule of law, and for refusing to enforce any prohibitions on sex change operations for minors, regardless of action from the legislator, that would be asserting that he would not enforce any laws relating to protecting the right to life in the Sunshine State. So, you know what? He did the right thing. I'm glad that he took that strong stance. I only hope to see more elected officials do the same thing, fight back against the woke-topians and the woke mob, because this is wrong. And here in the state of Florida, at least, and I can tell you that if Kari Lake gets elected in Arizona, here in the state of Florida, we will not tolerate that BS. So very good, Governor DeSantis. We love you. We're glad to have you again in 2022. And eventually, I'm sure you'll be running, but not in 2024. So going back to crazy instances around the states, we had this bizarre footage of, and this of course took place a couple of days before the Mar-a-lago raid, of lightning striking near the White House. But what's crazy about this is, I mean, lightning, when you see it, it's obviously this crazy anomaly that exists, but check out the video. It's wild. Unfortunately, I believe one person actually ended up passing away. However, the other person that ended up surviving attributes her survival, or her mother at least attributed her survival, to one of the trendiest shoes in 2022, and that is Doc Martens. So apparently the girl was wearing Doc Martens, and they say that actually grounded and is the reason why she largely survived. So we're glad that she's okay, but obviously our prayers and family go out to the family of the loved one that did not survive. But it's a wild video. Definitely check it out. Okay, so now for my favorite segment, we have our Florida Man of the Week. We actually have a few clips for you this week, starting with this guy who literally combats a gator with a frying pan. I posted this to my social media and it literally got over 100% engagement. We had, within 24 hours, over 450,000 views on this video. Check it out. So a couple comments, people said that, no, this happened in Australia, but if it is in Australia, man. He is now our Florida Man of the Week, but it doesn't just stop there. All right, so for our other episodes, you have some funny bits. We had a Florida man that basically stole, by the name of Redbeard nonetheless, who ended up stealing an $1,800 bird, beautiful bird, but ended up releasing him. We don't know why he stole him, but he did. We had a Florida man who shaved someone's cat's head and then ran off. And then we ended up with a Florida man who tried to kiss a rattlesnake and gets bitten. Fellas, stay away from your ex-girlfriends. Ex-girlfriends, stay away from your ex-boyfriends. That's how you avoid a bite. But nonetheless, that was our Florida man stories of the week. All right, so for our questions from the audience, these questions were submitted from the audience on my Instagram at @RealAnnaPaulina. Question was elephant or giraffe? I happen to love both, but if I really had to choose one, I would choose an elephant. And no, not because I'm a Republican. I genuinely love elephants. I actually had the pleasure of eloping in India several years ago. Now, years ago, I mean more like a decade ago. But nonetheless, they actually have elephants there. And you know how they have car loans here in the United States? Well, they actually do the same thing for elephants, but in India. And they'll paint them, and you'll be driving in the middle of a city and have all of these tuk-tuks, which are these like little tiny taxis, and then cars everywhere, and then you'll see an elephant that's painted right next to you, and it's literally like being in just a, I mean, obviously you're in a completely different country, but the experience is absolutely wild. Very smart animals, and they cry and they kneel. I don't know if you know this, elephants can actually honor the dead, and a fun fact, they can also paint. Okay, next question I had was, what is happening with our justice system where the FBI is able to do what they do? So here's the deal. The FBI isn't just operating rogue. They're being given instructions by someone, right? So like you have to get a warrant. The warrant is typically authorized by the DOJ. Usually they have to have probable cause to get that search warrant. Then a judge signs off on it. Then the FBI actually carries out the task. The point is, though, is that what many Americans feel and what we are seeing is that there is a double standard that currently exists and seems to exist within the justice system. Now, it doesn't mean that all FBI agents are bad. There are still good FBI agents. However, it's top-down instruction, and that's incredibly important for not just your job, but as we're seeing here in the country, leadership matters. And all of these appointees, whether it's the head of the FBI, whether it's the head of the DOJ, these are all Biden appointees. So what information could they possibly need to where they couldn't just go to Trump and say, hey, we need this information? They had to send the FBI to raid his home. They couldn't just ask for that information. I mean, the whole way that it was done to send a message. And I think that it's really ticking off the American people, because President Trump, whether or not the Democrats, whether or not Hillary Clinton will ever admit it, President Trump was elected by the people here in the United States, not the Washington Beltway DC crew, not global elitists, by the people. And they don't like that. People that represent actual Americans, they're huge threats to this establishment, this power, this status quo. A lot of people want to know what can be done. And frankly, what you have to do, I'll continue to say it again and again and again, is you guys have to get involved in getting good people elected. Because as we know, President Trump should run in 2024. And President Trump needs to run in 2024. I think if you're looking at what's happening now, here's a video of what President Trump released yesterday right after the raid.
We are a nation that has the highest inflation in over 40 years. Where the stock market just finished the worst first half of a year in more than 5 decades. We are a nation that has the highest energy cost in its history, and we are no longer energy independent or energy dominant, which we were just 2 short years ago. We are a nation that is begging Venezuela and Saudi Arabia for oil. We are a nation that surrendered in Afghanistan, leaving behind dead soldiers and American citizens and $85 billion worth of the finest military equipment in the world. We are a nation that allowed Russia to devastate a country, Ukraine, killing hundreds of thousands of people, and it will only get worse. We're a nation that has weaponized its law enforcement against the opposing political party like never before. We've never seen anything like this.
You know, you finish watching this video and you realize President Trump is right. We went from being a nation that was at the lowest cost of gas in a very long time, had lowest inflation, had highest employment, was respected on the world stage, had a booming military, had a lot of morale. And now, not even 4 years later, I mean, like, you can't even recognize the country. And for a lot of people have been saying this, the country that you grew up in when you were little is no longer in existence. We have a lot of work to do. And if we do not take it back with, I think, MAGA Republicans, we're in trouble. By the way, congratulations. This didn't get a lot of coverage yesterday, but Joe Kent actually won his race. And today, Jamie Herrera Butler actually conceded to Joe Kent in Washington 1. So she was one of the members of Congress that was a Republican that voted for impeachment, and she did not get reelected. So congratulations to Joe Kent. Anyways, please don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your comments, and don't forget to tune back into next week's episode of From the Desk of Ana Paulina Luna. And also, if you see a Florida man or woman or gator in action, don't forget to tag us on our social media at Real Ana Paulina. We look forward to having you back next week. This is From the Desk of Ana Paulina Luna.